Have you ever walked into a room and sensed, almost immediately, that someone there was quietly, or not so quietly, testing your worth? Have you ever found yourself putting on a forced smile just to keep the peace around someone who clearly disrespects you, only to end up feeling unsettled long after the encounter? Have you ever wrestled with the dilemma of how to stand up for yourself without erupting in anger or turning the entire situation into a massive argument? These questions aren't rare. Many of us struggle with finding a respectful but firm way to respond to people who fail to treat us with basic courtesy. In what follows, we'll dive into 10 distinct ways to handle people who do not respect you, all while maintaining your calm, your sense of personal dignity, and your mental and emotional well-being. The goal isn't to become confrontational or vindictive. Instead, it's about developing a solid foundation of self-worth and clarity, so that no matter who you face, you preserve your integrity and protect your peace of mind. Each of these approaches can be adapted to your circumstances. The overarching theme is that you have the right to decide how you respond to others, and no one has the power to make you feel inferior unless you grant it. Let's explore these 10 ways in depth. Number 1. Leverage the power of a silent pause. Imagine you're in a team meeting and a coworker cuts you off mid-sentence or dismisses your ideas as trivial. Your instinct might be to jump in, defend yourself, or argue back because you don't want to look passive. However, consider a different tactic. Quietly meet their gaze and say nothing for a few seconds, maybe 5 or 6 heartbeats. Let your eyes rest on them without any obvious anger or hurt. This extended silence disrupts the normal sequence of a heated exchange. Typically, disrespectful individuals expect you to look flustered, raise your voice, or scramble to recover. But if you hold your ground, simply remaining quiet, you're sending a clear signal. I see what you're doing, and I'm not playing along. A friend of mine named Jake found this especially effective during a weekly briefing where another colleague constantly tried to dominate. That colleague would speak over Jake and effectively push his input aside. One day, Jake responded by stopping mid-sentence, locking eyes with the interrupter, and letting silence fill the air for about 5 seconds. Suddenly, the rest of the room noticed the tension. The coworker started to lose composure, eventually stammered, and looked away. The strong message was conveyed without Jake having to raise his voice or deliver a witty comeback. It was as though Jake had held up a mirror, forcing the other person to realize how rude he was being. This silent pause is a powerful tool because it denies them the response they crave. It also reminds you, the target of their disrespect, that you are under no obligation to justify yourself or react the way they want. With only a few seconds of wordless calm, you maintain your composure and prompt them to face their own behavior. Number 2. Use silence as an intentional form of response. In many cases, you can defuse rudeness simply by choosing not to engage with it verbally at all. Some individuals feed on drama, so if you don't give them the dramatic reaction they're expecting, they lose interest. Suppose you have a coworker named Laura who loves making snide remarks about everyone's appearance or lifestyle choices. When you protest or explain yourself, she thrives on that energy. Oh, so you're getting defensive, are you? Instead, if Laura drops a rude comment, you can calmly, even kindly, look at her without a word. Or you can shift your attention elsewhere, as though you didn't even hear the barb. At first, someone like Laura might push harder, trying to provoke the reaction she wants. But soon, she'll notice that it's like speaking into a void. She's not getting the satisfaction of seeing you upset or flustered. You'll be surprised how quickly such people abandon their disrespectful approach once it yields no payoff. Another example, imagine Daniel, who deals with a friend who is always pushing him to justify why he's single or why he chooses certain hobbies. Before, Daniel would jump into lengthy explanations, which only led his friend to dissect every word. One day, Daniel decided to respond with a small smile and no further reply. After a few moments of awkward silence, his friend didn't know where else to steer the conversation. Over time, that line of questioning simply faded away. Not engaging can be far more impactful than a heated retort because it conveys self-assurance. You're telling them, your negativity isn't worth my breath. In that vacuum, People often have to sit with their own behavior, realizing their jabs lack significance if you refuse to dignify them with an answer. Number 3. Stop over-explaining your personal decisions. We've all faced those who demand to know why you declined an invitation, changed careers, or parted ways with a friend. They might frame their questions as concern. But how will you handle the finances? Won't you regret leaving a stable job? Doesn't that sound irresponsible? In truth, they may simply be undermining your choices. The biggest trap here is to jump into elaborate defenses for every step you take. Sure, you can share some details if you sense genuine curiosity or support, but if someone is determined to pick your decisions apart, your extensive explanations won't change their stance. Consider Charlotte, who decided to shift from a high-paying corporate job to a smaller nonprofit role focused on community outreach. Relatives bombarded her with, "Why throw away a secure salary? Are you sure you know what you're doing?" Initially, Charlotte would recite all the logic behind the switch, about her passion, her broader goals, her savings plan. But she soon realized it was a losing game. Each new explanation spawned new criticisms. Finally, she learned to respond simply with, "I'm pursuing something more meaningful to me." That's enough. The conversation tended to stop there. This method spares you from frustration and underscores your self-trust. If others choose not to respect your autonomy, that's their issue. By not supplying continuous justification, you reclaim your time, energy, and confidence. Affirming your own decisions with a brief, calm statement is often more powerful than offering lengthy clarifications that invite further debate. Number 4. Limit your interactions with people who thrive on negativity. If you've tried politeness, direct conversation, and giving them the benefit of the doubt, yet they remain consistently disrespectful, it may be time to create some distance. Picture your social and professional circles as rooms in your home. You get to decide who enters, how long they stay, and how they behave while in your space. Someone who is repeatedly rude, belittling, or manipulative does not merit unlimited access. Step back. You don't have to broadcast your intention or declare, "I'm cutting you off." A quieter approach often works better, especially in professional environments. Perhaps you reduce how often you text them, or you don't plan outings with them. You skip gatherings they attend, or keep conversations with them strictly professional and minimal. Imagine Ethan, who had a friend named Mark known for insulting and mocking others as a joke. Over time, Ethan found himself constantly anxious around Mark, always anticipating the next put down. Eventually, Ethan decided to step away. Without drama or accusations, Ethan simply turned down Mark's party invites and joined other social groups that valued mutual respect. This shift granted Ethan greater peace, as he no longer had to brace himself for Mark's barrage of insensitive remarks. By reassigning who holds VIP status in your life, you reinforce your worth. This is not about being mean, it's about self-care. Life is too short to endure relationships that wear you down. As soon as you acknowledge you deserve better, it becomes easier to distance yourself from harmful individuals, thus making space for healthy connections. Number 5. Project self-assurance with upright posture and composed demeanor. It might sound like trivial advice, but posture and body language can strongly influence how people treat you and how you feel about yourself. Someone lacking respect typically wants you to shrink in their presence, slouch your shoulders, or speak in a timid tone. When you instead stand or sit tall, with your head up, and respond calmly, you send an unmistakable statement. I am confident and not easily diminished. Take, for instance, Mason. His co-worker at a design agency frequently tried to outshine him or point out supposed flaws in his approach. Mason once tended to slump when criticized, offering apologies or rushed explanations. Then he decided to shift his posture and speak in an even, steady voice, never lowering his gaze. This consistent display of confidence made his co-worker realize that Mason wasn't an easy target. Over time, the co-worker's attempts to disparage him fizzled. On a deeper level, when you hold yourself with dignity, you are telling your own psyche that you are worthy of respect. This mental posture resonates with the outside world. People sense that you're comfortable in your own skin, so attempts to belittle you often fall flat. Even if someone tries to undermine you with sarcastic remarks, your balanced, assured body language can make them feel their efforts are wasted. Maintaining good posture, unwavering eye contact, and a steady tone can shield you from giving any impression of submission or self-doubt. If you combine that physical confidence with kindness, you radiate a presence that commands respect without needing to put anyone else down. Number 6. End the conversation when it starts to turn toxic. Sometimes, you genuinely try to have a civil discussion, say, with a colleague about a project or a relative about a family issue, but they persistently push the exchange into insulting territory. Instead of laboring on in the hopes of fixing their hostility, it's entirely valid to stop. Politely, but firmly, declare that you're not continuing this discussion under such circumstances. I think we should pause this conversation if we can't maintain a respectful tone can suffice. Then, follow through. Don't wait around for them to intensify the disrespect. Politely remove yourself from the conversation or the room. Rebecca, for example, had a neighbor who repeatedly dropped by to complain about trivial things, eventually hurling personal insults whenever Rebecca tried to clarify or negotiate. Finally, after attempts at calm dialogue proved useless, Rebecca said, "I'm sorry, but I'm not discussing this anymore," and shut the door. This might feel blunt, but at some point, you must safeguard your mental space. You never have to stand there as someone spews demeaning remarks. By setting a clear boundary that you will disengage once the situation becomes unhealthy, you demonstrate self-respect, and ironically, it may also nudge the other person to reflect on their manner. If they choose to keep being rude, that's on them, but at least you are no longer contributing to the confrontation. Number 7. Maintain your composure, no matter how provocative they become. People who engage in disrespectful behavior often do so because they relish watching others lose their cool. Anger, frustration, or tears give them a certain power trip. By controlling your emotions, you leave them with nowhere to go. Picture yourself as a strong fortress. Storms may rage outside, but your core remains intact. If someone raises their voice at you or flings biting comments, you can reply in a measured tone with minimal words, or even just a thoughtful nod. That approach undermines their mission to destabilize you. One scenario, Hannah, who worked at a busy restaurant, was sometimes confronted by impatient diners who raised their voices about minor inconveniences. While a younger Hannah might have apologized profusely and gotten flustered, she learned to remain calm. She would look the customer in the eye, speak in a steady voice, and say something like, "I understand you're upset. Let me see how I can help." No matter how rude they were, Hannah refused to mirror their aggression. Over time, she found that many angry diners softened once they realized she wouldn't be provoked. By not reacting with anger or panic, you effectively communicate that their negative energy has no influence over your sense of self. Number 8. Speak up one time, concisely, if necessary. Sometimes, the person who disrespects you is doing it out of cluelessness rather than malice. In those situations, you might decide to briefly clarify your feelings. For instance, if a friend, Morgan, makes jokes about your personal life, you could calmly say, "I don't appreciate those comments, and I'd like us to keep it respectful." Keep your tone measured and direct. Don't get entangled in explaining how you arrived at that boundary or why it matters so much. If Morgan then recognizes the line you've drawn and stops, you've resolved the issue. But if they persist, you'll know they don't care about respecting you, and you can adopt the other methods, like limiting contact or refusing to continue the conversation. This short, direct statement informs them that their words or actions aren't okay with you. You're effectively giving them a chance to correct course. If they do, great. If not, you're prepared to act accordingly. Number 9. Devote more of your time to positive relationships. Often, we endure negativity from certain individuals so persistently that we forget to nurture connections with those who genuinely support us. If you find yourself exhausted by a colleague or acquaintance who seldom shows you respect, see if you can redirect your energy toward the relationships that uplift you. Hang out more with the coworkers who value your contribution or the friend group that encourages you. You have only so many hours in a day. Investing them in negativity leaves you drained, and less available for people and projects that inspire you. Consider Brandon, who realized he'd been going to lunch daily with a colleague who continually belittled his work. Eventually, Brandon decided to switch things up. He started joining a different set of colleagues who shared professional tips and personal encouragement. Suddenly, Brandon found his lunch hour became a restorative break rather than a stressor. Over time, he formed new alliances that boosted his morale and career prospects, rather than undercutting his confidence. This method, focusing on constructive, healthy connections, doesn't mean ignoring the negative individual's existence. It just means you're opting to invest in what grows your sense of well-being. Number 10. Reflect on whether you might inadvertently disrespect others. Respect flows in both directions. While certain people clearly aim to tear you down, it's also vital to ask whether you might be treating someone else similarly without noticing. We can get so caught up in self-defense that we fail to see our own unkind habits. For instance, Mark found himself complaining that a particular friend was always mocking his taste in music, but Mark then realized he frequently teased other friends about how boring their hobbies seemed. That revelation prompted him to reevaluate his own jokes and how they might be experienced by those on the receiving end. By ensuring you practice a respectful approach in your own speech and demeanor, you stay consistent with the principle that disrespect is never okay from anyone, including yourself. This fosters a healthier environment overall and strengthens your confidence in standing up for your boundaries. After all, if you demand courtesy while also showing courtesy, you model the type of exchange you want to see in your relationships. These 10 strategies form a roadmap for preserving self-respect in the face of disrespectful people, whether they're casual acquaintances or close friends and relatives. From the power of silent pauses and the choice not to engage verbally, to deciding you no longer owe explanations for your life choices, to controlling your posture and tone, to drawing a firm line when things turn toxic, each approach underscores one fundamental point. You have the right to dictate how you respond, whom you allow into your life, and how you use your time and energy. No one else gets to steal your sense of worth unless you let them. It's also worthwhile remembering that these strategies don't amount to encouraging hostility. Rather, they're about communicating to the world, I am aware of my dignity, and I have no interest in joining a contest of negativity. When you withdraw from pointless arguments or limit contact with those who refuse to show basic respect, you are, in essence, affirming that you will not tolerate being treated as a target. True empowerment arises from calmly standing your ground. You don't have to raise your voice to be heard, nor do you have to launch into big speeches to make a point. If these reflections resonate with you, please consider giving a like to show your support. Feel free to share these ideas with anyone who might be dealing with similarly disrespectful interactions. And if you'd like more content on navigating relationships and building inner confidence, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. May you always stay anchored in your self-worth. Keep your composure when confronted by negativity, and remember that self-respect begins and ends with you.